Now it's time to look back at the Bundesliga Matchday again. We're now at number 13. There's only 2 weeks left until the winter break, and so let's get into it. On Friday, Borussia Mönchengladbach played Mainz. Mainz had fired head coach Bo Henriksen last week following the fact that they're dead last now. They also just lost to Hoffenheim. And this would turn out to be Mainz's only game with an interim head coach because they've already hired a replacement. But it did not matter because Gladbach got the job done and won 1-0. It was a game of 2 own goals. The first one was actually ruled out, and it was rather questionable too because it was said that the ball touched the hand of Yannick Engelhardt, but the replays you can't see anything. And so it really makes you think, okay, why was this ruled out? But Gladbach did cause the Mainz keeper Daniel Batz to make a lot of very good saves, but they finally got the breakthrough in the second half from another own goal. This time, Haris Tabakovic's header bounces off Danny Da Costa into the goal. Gladbach now extend their unbeaten run to 5 games, and they're in 10th now. And they're level on points with Cologne. And so basically they're tied for 8th, more or less. In reality they're not, but the games continue to come and they're all pretty easy as well. They play Wolfsburg next as well. So yeah, Gladbach continue to turn things around, and it doesn't help that Tim Kleindienst is actually injured again, but when you've got a striker who is in the form of his life in Haris Tabakovic, it doesn't really matter. As I said, Mainz have a new head coach, and that head coach is Urs Fischer, who finally has a job. He's been linked ever since he left Union Berlin at the end of 2023, so over 2 years ago. He's been linked to every job under the sun, and he finally has one. His task will be to get Mainz to qualify for the Conference League, and then get them out of the situation they find themselves in. Which, considering the early work he did with Union Berlin, you could believe it's quite possible that it could work. What doesn't help Mainz, and we'll get to it, is how the teams around them have been playing or performing. But yeah, it's down to Urs Fischer now to get the best out of this team. Obviously there is a few talented players in there and they just haven't been performing at their best. The question is though, will he rely on youth? Because at Union, Fischer did not rely on youth at all. But at Mainz you've got the likes of Nelson Viper, Paul Nabel. You have these young players who can or are key to the team, and if you bench them for more experienced players, it could backfire in this situation. And I think that's definitely something to look out on, because Viper's better than Hollerbach, but he's struggled, especially under Henriksen. So if he's given, it's up to now to Fischer to whether he gives the trust in youth players, which I think at Mainz is so much more important than it was at Union Berlin. Especially when you have such a talented youth academy as well. On Saturday, the standout game was Stuttgart versus Bayern, and for most of it, it looked like an even affair, with set pieces proving to be a bit of a problem for Bayern. They did take the lead through a nice worked goal and a nice finish from Konrad Laimer, but Stuttgart had equalised through a free kick, which was headed in by Nicolas Nati, but it was then ruled out for offside. But again, shows that set pieces are a problem for Bayern. Every single game now, they've had a problem from set pieces, and they just look it's so problematic for them. And they still haven't somehow found a solution yet. But at the end of the day, what's becoming quite a common occurrence is the teams that Bayern play, even if they're quite good, something will happen and then they'll just collapse. And that's what happened to Stuttgart. They have this goal disallowed, Harry Kane comes on, scores, and then they just fall apart. Kane ends up scoring a hat-trick, Josip Stanisic scores as well, and it ends 5-0. But one of the takeaways from this is, Alexander Nubel, it's time, buddy. He is really inconsistent, and it's becoming a bit of a problem. It's as if, he'll have these games where he makes all these really good saves and may in a way win the game for Stuttgart, and then he just does stupid shit like this and he ends up losing the game for Stuttgart. It's even funnier that it's happening against the team who he's on loan from, and then it just makes you think, he's not even good enough for Bayern. Like he can't even be the number 2. So he won't be staying in Germany after this season. He'll end up moving elsewhere. But he's shown he has struggled, and so good for Stuttgart that they have a backup in. But what the disallowed goal ruined us of is a nice story. So the goal scorer for Stuttgart was Nicolas Nati. Nati has actually been at the club since 2019, but it's only this season that he's actually started to kick on. And the reason for that is his injury history. He's basically had problems in his knee, which has kept him out for 280 days. He just had recurring injury problems, which has meant he's never been able to get a proper run in the team until now. And from what I have seen, especially in this game against Bayern, he actually did quite well. And he's presenting himself as a possible backup option in midfield. His contract actually expires at the end of the season. But he's shown himself to be a potential good backup option in midfield, especially in place of Atakan Carazor, because I think you know how I feel about that. As I said, what this kind of story that it took from us was the fact this would have been Nati's first goal for Stuttgart since joining, because of his injuries and stuff. But he's having a really proper good run out this season now, and if he continues, it would be fair to potentially use him as a backup option in the team, especially because his brother is also said to be quite talented as well, so if you can convince him to join, it would help as well. Then 2 games are going to join together because they kind of interlinked, is both Heidenheim against Freiburg and St. Pauli versus Cologne. The reason this is important is not only does it does sink Mainz further into the table, but it also shows how chaotic the relegation battle is or will be. Heidenheim again left it late to beat Freiburg 2-1. They were 1-0 down, they came from behind, and then because of a Freiburg mistake in defence, it was an under-hit back pass, which the Heidenheim striker was able to latch onto, they scored the winner, and that means Heidenheim have moved up to 16th. While for St. Pauli, they have obviously been on a 9-game losing run. And it looked like this was going to extend to 10 when they were 1-0 down to Seidem Malago. But they too, in a bit of a flip to last week, where they lost in the dying moments to Bayern, but they drew you in the dying moments to Cologne to bring to an end their losing run. And it's similar vein to Nicolas Nati, but not to the same extent. The story of the St. Pauli goal scorer equaliser he's called Ricky J. Jones. He joined in the summer on a free transfer from Peterborough in England, and this was his debut because he suffered an injury in the summer, which meant he was out until now. And on his debut, he scores what is a crucial goal for St. Pauli as they try and at least build some sort of momentum and try and fight relegation this time instead of letting it suck them up. But again, it's proven to, it's really closed the gap now on the relegation fighting teams, especially because the other teams at the bottom also won in Augsburg and Wolfsburg. Augsburg, they played Leverkusen, and after a very strong midweek from Leverkusen, where they beat Dortmund, they then just completely flop, and it was a really questionable performance for Leverkusen. Augsburg win the game. Augsburg themselves are without a head coach because they sacked Sandro Wagner earlier this week. There is still yet to be any sort of indication whether they have a head coach in mind, but again, there's still 2 weeks till the winter break, and if you're a serious club, you try and hire a head coach then. But admittedly, in this game, Augsburg did kind of ride their luck at times, because Leverkusen hit the woodwork 4 times, with the most kind of comical one being the last time, when Nathan Teller all he has to do is tap it in, and he ends up hitting the post. But this game did require some decent saves from Finn Darman. Then Wolfsburg beat Union 3-1. Wolfsburg were very clinical in this game. It was really a case of they had 3 shots on target and scored 3 of them. They did look a bit shaky at times at the end as they tried to hold on to the Kudirakis, scored an own goal, gave away a penalty, but the penalty was saved by Grabara. But I think the highlight in this game for Wolfsburg was Christian Eriksen on Lovro Mayer. Been a long time coming for either of them to actually step up and perform. and they were able to do that now. Maya scored, Eriksen got an assist, and overall it was a decent game for the pair of them. And I think, as I said, not only do the pair have to perform, but if you can get the best out of them, then it will help Mohamed Amoura a lot as well, who also played well today, or on Saturday, I mean. So yeah, I think whoever again, it's the same with Wolfsburg. There's no like indication of who their new head coach is going to be, but whoever it is needs to get the best out of Eriksen and Maya, because if they can do that, then that will help them going forward. To round out Saturday, Leipzig beat Frankfurt 6-0. The clear thing to say is, what the hell? Jan Diomande scored his first career hat-trick, and he's really like been a standout for Leipzig this season, along with Hassan Udriogo. I think what will be interesting for Leipzig is like what do they do when Diomande goes to AFCON in a week's time, or just a week or two. Brought a new dynamic to the wing. It helps that they have Johan Bakayoko as well as Antonio Nusa, but he's brought a real dynamic to the wing, and he has performed a lot better than I thought, especially considering where he came from and the fee. So again, like, you can kind of see why Leipzig value him at 100 million. He is actually the second youngest person to score a hat-trick in the Bundesliga as well. So in his first season, he has 6 goals and 3 assists in 800 minutes of Bundesliga football, which is quite ridiculous if we're being completely honest. And he will, with the trajectory he's on, he will be Leipzig's most expensive sale when he does eventually leave. However, while Diomande and Udriogo have kind of been the stars of the show, Christoph Baumgartner has been underrated. I think I highlighted him earlier in the season, but he's just kind of continued. He has 6 goals and 5 assists in 13 games. This is his best season of his career, and we're not even halfway through it yet. And he's just kind of stepped up and delivered when he's needed. I mean, he's playing well as well. It was his through ball his chipped through ball for Konrad Harder's opener. It was the fact that he's crashing the box as well. Maybe Baumgartner was kind of had to adapt his role with when Udriogo was playing, but now Udriogo's absent again. He can kind of step up and be like this more attacking-minded midfielder, and he's clearly obviously very good at it and is actually delivering now on what everyone thought he could be when he was at Hoffenheim. However, Frankfurt, defending is a real problem for them, and it's been highlighted throughout the season. Obviously, I thought they may have turned a corner and just became shit in attack, but now they're just both. As I said, in attack it's a bit more nuanced because they've missed out on several players are injured. For defending, it's just the same stuff over and over again. The opener from Konrad Harder, Robin Koch and Arta Theat just kind of get lost. The second goal, Konrad Harder is by himself, and he's surrounded by 3-4 Frankfurt players, but no one decides to close him down. And no one decides to close him down or make a tackle or block off a lane to keep him isolated in the area he was in. But they allow him to play a ball across the box, which was diverted in by Baumgartner. And so it's becoming a real problem for Frankfurt. There's always talk, they may sign this attacker, they may sign that attacker. They need to sign defenders, and they need to sign good defenders at that as well. Probably their main focus will have to be a more defensive-minded midfielder as well, because they're so gung-ho that it just doesn't work half the time, and they really are putting themselves at a disadvantage now. I mean, Frankfurt have the worst defence in the league, and they're 7th, which should tell you everything you need to know. I mean, they go into this game with a midfield duo of Faris Chaibi, who I've highlighted before. While he has had a good season before, he's still not a defensive midfielder, and you're playing him alongside Mahmoud Dahoud, who's also not a defensive midfielder. I mean, you have Elias Skiri, granted his legs are a bit gone, who's more of a defensive midfielder, but you still sub on the likes of Hugo Larsson, not a defensive midfielder. Mario Götze, not a defensive midfielder. And then you're trusting a 20-year-old Oscar Højlund to be your defensive midfielder, which is just backfiring completely. And Frankfurt have been linked to Onyedika, who plays for Club Brugge and is 24. This may be the reason, or this may be the way that Frankfurt have to go, because they need a good mobile defensive midfielder, and that's what Onyedika could be, especially compared to Eddie Skiri. And this is a real problem that Frankfurt need to address sooner rather than later, because if not, they're just going to continue bleeding goals. And as they continue to bleed goals, they're going to move further and further away from the European places. I mean, there's already a pretty sizable gap between them, and they're kind of in their own no man's land at the minute. On Sunday, we had the first Nord derby in nearly 8 years, Hamburg versus Werder Bremen, and it delivered. Hamburg came from behind to take a 2-1 lead. Bremen scored, and there was kind of a latish goal from Hamburg to win the game. The highlight goal was obviously Luka Vuckovic's. It was played in from a Fabio Vieira cross, and he backheeled it, kind of like scorpion kick, backheeled it into the goal to make it 2-1. Then you had Hamburg-born Justin Njinma making it 2-2. And then Yusuf Poulsen scores to get his first goal for Hamburg. And obviously Vuckovic has probably been Hamburg's standout player in the early parts of the season. I think he's won Rookie of the Month 2 times in a row now. The Arsenal duo as well have been performing. Obviously Sami Lokonga is actually a permanent signing, whereas Fabio Vieira is on loan, but both have been performing. Vieira has obviously struggled with getting sent off twice, but he started to look good when he's played, while Lokonga has done well, and I think he scored 3 goals now for Hamburg as well. But overall, it was a big win for Hamburg. I think especially considering how they struggled in the Hamburg derby at the beginning of the season, mainly because it was obviously full of emotion, and they were still dealing with their return from the Bundesliga, but I think now they've integrated into the top flight, and they're now able to perform in these kind of biggish games. And the fact they were able to do this here against a Bremen side who have done all right this season as well, it's a big plus for them. It shows them that they may be hanging around in the bottom half of the table, but things are heading in the right direction for them. Then finally, Borussia Dortmund played Hoffenheim, and they won 2-0. Thanks to goals from Julian Brandt and Nico Schlotterbeck. It was a really scrappy win for Dortmund. Hoffenheim have obviously been high flyers in the early stages of the season, but they managed to see out the win and come away with a vital 3 points, especially when the likes of Leverkusen, Stuttgart, players around them in the top 4 had dropped points. So yeah, a real positive for Dortmund, and for once they actually looked somewhat convincing against a decent team and not scraping the way to a win. So the table, Bayern is still top, 8 points clear of Leipzig, who are in second. Dortmund are in third, 1 point behind Leipzig, while 5 points behind them now are Bayer Leverkusen on 23. Hoffenheim are also on 23, Stuttgart on 22, and Frankfurt are on 21. While at the bottom, Mainz are dead last, still on 18th with 6 points. St. Pauli are 17th on 8 points, and Heidenheim are 16th on 11 points. Next weekend, the standout game is kind of a small Rhine derby between Leverkusen and Cologne. You also have Freiburg versus Dortmund as well. Then Bayern Munich play Mainz, which will be Urs Fischer's first game in charge. Then Union Berlin play RB Leipzig as well. Then also there are Champions League games in midweek, with Bayern Munich playing Sporting, Borussia Dortmund are playing Bodo Glimt, Benfica Bayer Leverkusen are playing Newcastle, and most importantly Barcelona playing Eintracht Frankfurt. Why this is important is because obviously, if you remember Frankfurt's run to the Champions League to the Europa League final a couple of years ago, they basically made the Camp Nou a home away from home, and obviously they're back at the Camp Nou as well. While in the Europa League, Freiburg play Salzburg and Stuttgart play Maccabi Tel Aviv. Then Mainz play Lech Poznan, and that will be Urs Fischer's first game in charge. I got it wrong earlier, but his first Bundesliga game in charge will be against Bayern Munich. So let me know what you think. Who impressed you on the match day? Who surprised you in other ways? And just overall, what did you think?